So I have a little history in Bedford, and it's thrilling to be invited back here. I won a competition some years ago for Castle Lane, and so know something about the layering of the centre of Bedford. But I'm going to go back to childhood as well. When I was 7, I met a 70-year-old painter who really was the best kind of teacher. His stories, they ranged back into the 19th century. But he was also steeped in contemporary politics and cultural debate. And he was something of a radical. He painted scenes from newspaper cuttings of the student protests in Paris. He painted scenes off the television news of the miners' strike. And he painted full-length bonfire night pictures of Margaret Thatcher as Guy Fawkes. And I think I disappointed him in the end when he saw my architecture later as a radical. Because I think he was thinking I'd have big, bold visions of a new world. And what instead he saw was my work's sort of quite delicate stitching into the existing fabric of a place. And so he laughed at me and said I was an anti-architect. And this at the time, I think I remember being quite offended by that. But now I think that kind of anti-architecture is really quite interesting and something that maybe we need to all be doing more of. And so I want to tell you a story, one of the things that we've been doing that might talk about this kind of anti-architecture. A few years ago we were invited to join an academic research project called Adaptable Futures. And the researchers wanted us to help them explore tactics and ways of making buildings more adaptable. The notion being, of course, that if you can make a building adapt to new uses, say an office block turn into apartments, then that building has a chance of outliving its original use and lasting longer, which makes it so much more sustainable, because then all the embodied energy in that building, all the stuff that went into making it up, you can still retain. And this was interesting. It was the idea of buildings that are adaptable and flexible to us as an architectural practice made us think of certain architects who treat this subject as a bit of a holy grail. And they look at how perhaps there's a magic grid of columns that one can find that will help, or how the external skin of a building might change, or how great big sliding walls might give a space many functions over different times. And this was sort of a provocation to us, because for a long time we've really tended to think a bit more about the software of buildings rather than the hardware. And by that I mean that we're thinking about less tangible things than walls and column grids and ceiling heights. In fact, this sounds a bit goody-goody, but we do really like to think about people in our buildings. So if we're thinking about a space, we like to think, how does this room work and interact with the user? How does the sounds live and die in a staircase? Or how can we make a space have an intimate and easy relationship with the outside? And so we decided to take part in this research, but in the process we subverted their agenda. We started to think that rather than the nuts and bolts of a building, true adaptability lay in the interstices between maybe the actual building and the use of it. And then the more we talked about this research, we thought that in fact the real lack of adaptability was beyond individual buildings. It lay in our kind of rigidities in the ways that we think about cities. And so we wanted to explore the adaptable neighbourhood. And for our research, we chose an area that we already knew, a few blocks of rundown commercial buildings on the edge of Leicester city centre. The area is bounded by water, by the Grand Union Canal and the River Soar, and is known as Leicester Waterside. Now, usually, the way that things have happened, I need to say that for years, developers have been thinking about how they can do over this neighbourhood. And their schemes all had one thing in common. They would demolish or flatten the existing townscape. And then they could create what's known as a tabula rasa, a flat piece of ground, which in the industry is known as development ready, much as a supermarket chicken might be called oven ready. Except that, unlike the chicken, these sites often lie for years behind blue hoardings without any purpose, just waiting for something to happen. And various tactics are then used to encourage likely developers. Perhaps the site is de-risked. The soil is decontaminated using public money. Vision ports are constructed so that the planners are signed up to a certain quantities of fashionable, vaguely fashionable, but perhaps bland development. But finally, the site becomes a political embarrassment, and then something, and in some cases anything, needs to be done to make this, deliver the necessary margins of profitability to someone to make it all right. And this seems to often be the only acceptable pattern of development. Knock down everything. Otherwise, it's just going to be too difficult. And anyway, social and physical complexity is just not something that the development industry sees as part of its remit. And as architects, we know that in converting an existing building is invariably cheaper than knocking it down and rebuilding it. But that's just not what the system is geared up to provide. So the figures are kind of tilted, or we would say distorted, and the latent value of those buildings is, and the future of that community, in fact, is disregarded. So at Leicester Waterside, we wanted to do something really very different. We wanted to look at interventions which were small scale, particularly to start with. We were looking at change that was incremental, many small moves over time, which would, by degrees, deliver transformation. And we wanted to, and this was difficult even for us, we wanted to not knock down one building, no matter how horrible they were, in this mix. And most importantly, we wanted to work with the occupants, the existing buildings that were there, to help them grow the neighbourhood and to build on the foundations of what they already had achieved in social and neighbourhood terms. So that leads me to talk about, we started knocking on doors. And this is a neighbourhood where, well, this is an area which was really in full-scale blight, if you like, lots of unexplained fires and that kind of thing. And we were, behind all of the boarded up windows and broken glass, we were quite excited to find a lot of entrepreneurial energy still there under the skin. So there was Caroline, who used every inch of an old sock factory to support the development of professional musicians. There was Steve, who had doubled the turnover of his second generation Leicester toy company, and was really keen to invest in the area, but was in limbo because of the development plans. And there's iJazz, who had taken over the old petrol station, turned it into a cafe that was rapidly becoming the neighbourhood hub, while at the same time he was dealing in massive quantities of British powdered baby milk that he was exporting to China, as it was more trusted at that time. I've talked about some of the ground rules, and I'd now like to show you a short film. It's about 3 minutes to demonstrate how we tried to communicate those ground rules, and let's see what you think.
Leicester Waterside has evolved over 2 millennia, collecting a lot along the way. Its street pattern, canal, buildings, stories, a powerful sense of place. It would simply be wasteful, a squandering of resources, to throw it all away. It has all the hard stuff it needs to kick off. A varied collection of sturdy buildings of all ages, a great bunch of committed local businesses, a position in the thick of it abutting the main road into town, the city centre, parks, the canal, 3 universities, a river. All that was needed was a forum to put everyone in the neighbourhood in touch with each other. By meeting up online and on site, the community's been getting together, pooling their ideas, resources, passions and expertise to begin adapting the neighbourhood to embody their hopes and aspirations. Each thing that gets done makes it easier for those coming after. A chain reaction, if you like. New signage guides people from the centre, catches their attention driving on the ring road, and it shouts about the local businesses and shops. Young jobs come to the area with a music festival, a food city week, an upcycling market, and an outdoor cinema, bringing large numbers of people to the site. A pop-up garden and nursery is built, softening the border with the main road and bringing gardening enthusiasts who help radically green up the place. Buildings are converted into offices, event spaces and student accommodation. New work opportunities mingle with existing enterprises, and they all open up their buildings with big openings, so the street comes alive with their activity. Shops and rooftop bars open up as people relax and hang out in the area. A canal club brings canoeists and waterlife enthusiasts. A few families move in. The market and garden get a permanent home, and the old viaduct is opened up with grand steps as it becomes the favourite route into town. The Food City event becomes a forum for 1,000 chefs, full of kitchens where people from all over Leicestershire come to cook and sell their specialty meals, with all the eating and talking and tasting spilling out into a new public square by the canal. The battle of young chefs on the stands in the cluster of kitchens attracts a TV company, and the place becomes famous, along with some of the chefs. There's no need to let our cities decay, or knock them down. Our neighbourhoods are the giants whose shoulders we stand on. Adapt them and enrich ourselves with jobs, history, community and place. Lose them and we leave ourselves destitute.
So you saw in the film a number of key strategies, and this is a little GIF that's going to show you adapting over time. We wanted to use events to put this forgotten and neglected area of the city back on the map. We wanted to obviously build up the businesses that were already there, but we also wanted to attract new startups to the area, which meant good space and affordable rents. And that meant working with landowners to get them to understand that by helping to build up this fragile economy and make it robust again, they were going to profit in the long term. And we wanted to bring people into this area to live again, to break down that zoning of, oh, that's a B1 industrial use area, but that this was a mixed area in the city. And so we wanted to bring in businesses at ground floor level, to cafes and hairdressers dry cleaners and make the place feel lively and safe again. And most importantly, though, we wanted to show how incremental change could change the thing. God, that's quick. Well, it hasn't happened yet, and I'd love to say that the Mayor of Leicester understood all of those things and came on board and made it all happen. But it's difficult because there's a stranglehold on places like Leicester, Leicester Waterside, which is about slow growth and unreal property values. And I think that we need to go back and think about being anti-architects, what my friend called anti-architects, and see that far from stymieing innovation, old buildings are actually a fantastic place to start. And to give the last word to a great American urbanist called Jane Jacobs, new ideas need old buildings. Thanks.